Hi, I'm Vicky Weekley, and I'm here with G Lopes. G, what's going on today?
Hi, Vicky.
G, why do you pretend like you don't like being interviewed?
Okay, I don't like being interviewed.
Lies.
No, it's not lies, and you know exactly why I don't like being interviewed. Something really interesting happened, and we went to World Youth Day as an office, which was really nice. And Vicky's been interviewing everybody and things like that the whole week, the whole time, which is fine. I mean, like that's like Vicky stuff. But it came to a point where I think like we were all losing it, and Vicky goes, "Hi, I'm Vicky Weekley, and I'm here with my burrito. Burrito, how are you?" And I was so frustrated. I was like, "You would interview this burrito before you interviewed me?" And then I was like, "I don't want to be interviewed anymore."
Yeah, and then the rest of the trip, I would interview him. And, World Youth Day is an emotionally, spiritually, physically exhausting trip. So I would catch him, and he would get, like, semi-emotional. He'd be like, you're not interviewing. You're not
Okay.
Amazing.
Okay,
Amazing.
emotional, that's a bit of a stretch. But what have you. I have had enough of this banter, so please tell me
fair.
what we are talking about today.
Today we are talking about Father Abe's video on reconciliation.
That's right. So did you get a chance to watch it at all?
No, I missed it.
To me, out of the two videos, I actually enjoyed this one a little bit more. Not because the first video wasn't good. I think it was important to know about developing and building community, but this one I think was more of a personal issue for me. I'm actually one of those people who have asked Father Abe, "Hey, can you just hear my confession, please? Like, do you know you have that pastoral exception? Why don't you use that?" And Father Abe is a man of the cloth, so he is a man of the institution where he's like, "No, listen, this is how we do it." So I thought that was pretty interesting. What were some of your thoughts?
I love the real approach of it. I especially loved the moment when he was like, it's like getting a hug. Like, who wouldn't wait for that moment to get a hug after? Like, it's so nice to say I'm sorry over the phone, right? And I think sometimes, especially now that phones are in our everyday life, it's easy to say I'm sorry over the phone. But when you get that moment in front of the person to say I'm sorry, there's nothing like it. And I think the question that kept popping up would be like, what wouldn't I give to like have that moment with God to like get a hug, right? Like, it's okay. Like, I got you. Like, I forgive you. God's mercy is so much bigger than anything we can imagine. And I think the perfect reference is if you read any story of the Israelites in the Old Testament, right? Like, God literally forgave them over and over and over again.
Can anybody out there watching tell she just finished taking the Old Testament in her master's class?
Love the Old Testament.
There were a few quotes that I really enjoyed that Father Abe said. One of the things that he says was, "And when the opportunity return, let us run to him so that he can hold us in his loving embrace." I think that's actually something that Father Abe said. And I love how he ends his video, where he says that, "But we need to remember God's mercy knows no limit. He is not limited by our circumstance." And I think Father Abe does it in such a pastoral way where it's almost like in unison. Like when I heard that, I almost hear it through Don Bosco, and then I almost hear it through the Pope, like in that like direct lineage, and then hearing it from the Pope, hearing it from Jesus himself. So it was really nice for me to hear, especially that even during quarantine I still have the opportunity to receive reconciliation. What is your take on reconciliation? Like, how is that for you?
Yeah, I think this time has really reminded me like what a privilege it is. I think how easily accessible it is to go to confession. Like I didn't take advantage as much as I should have, right? The best advice I was ever given about the examination of conscience is like, because the priest knew that I was like, I write things down. He was like, don't hold on to that paper, right? Like if you hold on to it, like there's a reminder of your sins there, but you're forgiven. So you need to let it go. So he was like, you need to take it out of your notebook, rip it up and throw it away. And that changed the game for me, like it really helped me have like another physical release of my sins. So hearing the words like you're absolved, making my penance, and then letting go of my sins on that paper was like the end all for me. Like it really just solidified it. And I think I'm excited for that moment when I can go to a priest, and make a confession. It's really hard, but I know what that feeling is like afterwards, and I want that so badly. What about for you?
Yeah, so I'm a person of habit. So every Saturday I would go to a parish for mass. Partially because I didn't want to wake up on Sunday to go to early mass, but so I would go to mass in the evening on Saturdays. But right before mass, there would always be confession available. So I would go to confession, and then I would go to mass, and I would receive the Eucharist in the best, like the holiest state that I could possibly be. Unless like somebody did something during mass that I'm like, oh my gosh, and then I'm like, look, like please, like I'm sorry, forgive that one. The first part about the best way to say sorry, so I look at it like my peer-to-peer, my relationships with other people, and even just taking the first video into account. So building community, again, like I shared, that's not the easiest thing for me to do, but then also the same thing, reconciliation is not an easy thing for me to do. I find that there are people who can forgive and forgive and forgive, but I really struggle with forgiveness, even for minor things. That is a fault of mine that I've had since of a kid. So with that though, I also hold on to sins even though I've been forgiven for them already. Sure. even though the Lord has already forgiven me for them. And sometimes I have that guilt and I bring that into the confessional, and the priest would be very, again, compassionate and be like, look, you've confessed that already. That's gone, and for me, that's really hard for me to let go. So I actually found in his fourth volume. So for those who don't know, Don Bosco has a lot that has been written about him. So this quote comes from Baptiste Lemoine, who was a Salesian priest who wrote some of his biographical memoirs early on. We have that famous photos of Don Bosco where he's just listening to somebody's confession.
I love that one. Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that Baptiste Lemoine writes is that Don Bosco did such a vast amount of good through the sacrament of penance that we should rightfully call him the apostle of confession. He inspired such peace of soul and trust in God's infinite mercy that many boys found it difficult to accustom themselves to another confessor once they left the oratory for good. I got chills just reading that and just hearing how at the priority for Don Bosco was to make sure that their souls went to heaven. I thought that to me echoed exactly what Pope Francis was sharing in his homily. But I actually looked up his homily as well, and the last line of Pope Francis's homily on March 20th to me was incredible. And Pope Francis says, "Return to your daddy, return to your father. He's waiting for you, and he will throw a feast for you." I think sometimes, in my experience, when I think about my sins, I limit myself. I allow that shame to be greater than God. I allow that shame to be greater than his mercy. And I think the reminder that Father Abe has, that St. John Bosco had, and that Pope Francis reminds us of, is that God's mercy has no limits, and that it's not limited by our circumstances. So even in my anxiety, in my focus on shame, the Lord is bigger than that. He can't be placed into this small, anxious box that I want him to be in. So that's what I took from Father Abe's videos.
I remember just learning about it. Like, he would beg the boys, right? Exactly what you're saying. Like, he'd beg, like, it doesn't have to be me. Pick anybody, but go, and I think that's an important lesson today. Like, it doesn't have to be like the priest that you're used to going to. Find a priest, make your confession, get back to God. I'm excited myself to get back, and make my own confession, but I'm glad Father Abe addressed it. I think it's something that's weighing on people that are they frequent confession, but then also those that might be longing for it in this time. People that have grown closer to God during this time. I'm sure it's something that they're ready to do. So I hope people, take something from it.
Even in the act of mercy, I need to have mercy with myself and what I want. And sometimes that can seem super selfish. So now I want adoration, I want confession, I want the Eucharist. And I'm placing my needs over the reality that this pandemic has really kind of challenged us with. And I have to embrace the common good. But I think even with embracing the common good is I want more of my routine.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I'm working on separating, because what Pope Francis and Father Abe remind us of is that God's forgiveness is still coming to you. You just miss your routine.
Yep.
So I really think that's been a challenge for me to process, to discern on how I can really work through that selfishness that I'm wrestling with right now. You know, the routine has been great, and I am a person of habit, but God is routinely forgiving me, and
Yeah.
I think that's where I really need to accept the routine in this moment. So yeah. So listen, Vicky, you know, really good. Always great conversation. Well, you know, sometimes it's better than others, but I appreciate I appreciate this conversation. Thank you everybody for watching. We're really excited that you continue to watch. Make sure that you hit that like button, click subscribe, and turn on the notifications. Be on the lookout for all of the stuff that we have, especially our Empowering Salesian Leaders program for all of our Salesian young adults who are in the province looking to do something for the summer, which quite frankly, all of you are. Okay, so my name is G. Lopes, that's Victoria Weekley, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace!
Bye, everyone.